Hi everyone, welcome to the third episode of Banger Interviews. And today I have a very special guest, Mr. Josh Christian, the guitarist and leader of Toxik, a classic New York thrash metal band. If there's anyone who doesn't know Toxik, they're a fantastic technical progressive thrash metal band. They have two classic albums released, World Circus and Think This. And also, they just released, last year, they released their comeback record, This Morta, which is also an awesome record. So make sure to check that out. But Josh, thank you so much for joining me today. How's it going?
Excellent, excellent. Glad to be here. It's a little early. It's a little earlier here than there, but it's perfect.
So today, in this interview, we're gonna go through Josh's inspirations. We're gonna talk about the classic era of Toxic, the new record, and stuff like that. So I think let's start it off right at the beginning. So Josh, you're an incredible guitarist. You have a really distinctive, really unique technique and sound. I really love that. So how did you start playing the guitar, and how did you get your first guitar?
Okay. Well, I come from a musical family. On both sides of my family, there's music, both my mom's side and my father's side. My father was a multi-instrumentalist. He played guitar, he played bass, he played drums. And I was raised in that environment. Many of their friends were artists and musicians themselves. So I was raised in a pretty creative household. And my parents, I think, are largely responsible for the way I approach my art. It's all I've ever known. I mean, they were putting instruments in my hands from the time I was a little boy. So I play a lot of instruments. I do a lot of different kinds of music. It's just how I express myself from early childhood.
Do you have a favorite guitarist? Which guitarist had the biggest influence on you?
That's a tough one. I have a lot of favorite guitarists. I just had this conversation not that long ago. I find it difficult to say who's a best or who's a favorite. I really like so many people, and there's so many different people who've contributed. I feel like we're all here together, so I try not to do that too much. I do have a couple of people that really inspired me. Uli Roth was an early inspiration. Ulrich Roth from Scorpions, and of course his solo work. But that was one of the very first people that really got me thinking modally, using theory and like not just blues based riffing and ripping, but actually composing. And so I would say Uli Roth is that first real inspiration that got me thinking that way.
Ah, awesome. Yeah, Scorpions, especially, the later 70s record like Taken by Force and, Virgin Killer, those records,
My
the
favorite
riffing.
album,
Really?
Virgin Killer, is actually one of my all-time favorite records. I would put it. It's a desert island top 10 record for me. It's like and
Awesome.
that and in trance as well. Those amazing playing. Uli on fire on those records, man.
Yes, yeah, those two were the first to go towards that, more heavy metal hard rock direction.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a big fan of that too.
With all that Spanish Phrygian and melodic minor soloing going on. You know what I mean? Like that was the introduction of a minor third with a major seven in rock and roll. So
Right. That's awesome. Now it's that's really cool to hear. But yeah, so we're gonna go in kind of chronological order. The next question is that you're the only remaining original member of Toxic, which you formed in 1985. Um,
yes.
and uh, and you're the only member who's been on every single record, if I'm correct. So could you tell us a bit about the formation of Toxic, and had you ever been to a band previously, like
No,
before
no, it's a
Toxic?
good question. Yeah, it's a good question. I actually Toxic was what my high school, middle school band turned into. I have had Toxic really going since I was about 13 years old in one way or another. I started with Lee, the bass player, the original bass player from Toxic, who did the demo, and bailed right before World Circus got recorded, which was really sad because we were together for so long leading up to that. But, Toxic drops World Circus in 1987, but there is literally 7 years, almost 8 years, yeah, almost 8 years of Lee and I working together before that record comes out. And I mean, we played everything. We were a punk band. We played glammy hard rock for a while to get work. I mean, but we always did a lot of originals. And I would tribute Lee, for me personally, as the guy that really pushed me into songwriting, because he wasn't good enough to really play covers, and I was really just starting out myself, and it was easier for us to write punk songs, so that's how it started. So Toxik starts out as a punk band. And we've always kind of had a punk influence with our lyrics. To this day, it still has that influence. Guitar wise, like I said, I discovered Uli Roth. Again, I was in maybe eighth or ninth grade. I was probably 13 or 14 years old when I first heard that. So also has stayed with me my whole life. So I've really been at this for a really long time. I don't, it's funny to hear people say over and over that I'm the original member. If you look at every Toxik release, and even the releases that we did, the demos that we did before Toxik, I always worked with different people. Like, it's kind of like Toxik is almost, I don't want to say it's a solo project because I make sure that it's a band, but it's always kind of been an extension of me, and then I group people around that. So I think that's why I'm the last man standing. But I was always the last man standing. Like, it's always been people coming and going.
Right, yeah, there's gonna be actually a question about that. So
Okay.
that's also a really interesting thing. But first, so starting or talking about the influences, which band had the biggest influence on Toxic's signature style? Yeah.
Yeah. The switch when we transitioned into thrash and more technical. Watchtower had a big impact on me.
Ah, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, that first demo went, because I was part of the demo trading era. We were early 80s, we were all trading cassettes, and you would get these, you'd anxiously wait for the mail to come, and if you were lucky, you'd get 2 or 3 tapes in a day. And Energetic Disassembly blew my mind when I first heard it. I was like, wow. So I loved Rush. I was a big Rush fan, and I had it's a weird confluence. It's an interesting. I feel like I bring an interesting mix, and maybe that's why Toxik has a unique sound. Maybe that's why my guitar style is a little unique, because I really do have a real cross thread of simplistic and direct punk, but then really thoughtful and interesting progressive. I've always liked those two worlds. So
Yeah, yeah, actually that's now that you say it, it's I can really hear the rush on throughout the especially well both on World Circus and think this it's like think this is a bit more progressive
it is. Yeah.
so but yeah that's really awesome. You already mentioned that Virgin Killer is one of your favorite albums, but do you have a favorite band?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was your question, right? So I said, Watchtower helped Toxik transition.
Yeah.
Again, I like a lot of things. It's hard for me to pin one band. Metallica, No Life Till Leather was big. That demo really had an impact on me. I kind of could see where things were headed. Bomber by Motorhead, big influence on me when I first got that record. It was like, whoa. Venom, black metal, big influence on me. Tad, our original drummer, turned me on to Merciful Fate and Venom. I hadn't heard any of that stuff. So all of that kind of hit me at the same time in 1984. And it was like, okay, let's go.
Right.
And of
But
course, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and all those bigger stadium bands. But the real shit that I liked really was like Watchtower, Merciful Fate, later on Hellstar,
oh yeah.
like any of the proggy sort of metal stuff. Realm, our label mates, Realm, which is not a very well known band, but were amazing. Aspid, you know who Aspid is?
Yeah, yeah, the Russian guys, yeah.
Atheist, Coroner, like all of those bands, I always related to that kind of music, always. So always felt that's where it came from. So any band that put a technical spin on their rock, on their metal voice, that was what I aspired towards. I just looked for that shit. And it was pretty hard to find back in the day. There weren't a lot of bands doing it. Like, it got more and more popular as time went on. But back in the early 80s and even into the early 90s, it was pretty tough to find a progressive heavy band. There weren't a lot of us. So it was pretty exclusive, and it didn't sell very well, but that's okay. I mean, taste wise, you go with what you like, not what sells, right?
Right. But yeah, it's actually real awesome. Yeah, it's like it's the early 90s when it's that kind of, progressive thrash metal and death metal, those stuff blow up,
Yeah,
with Coroner
it
and
evolves.
yeah,
Yeah, it
Evolve. Yeah.
evolves. Like, it kind of comes together and then does this together, and that's how we got to where we are now. Honestly.
Yeah, that's incredible. But so you said, if I'm right, that World Circus didn't really sell that good. Is it right?
Modestly, right? World Circus probably sold better than Think This initially, but then Think This, once it was out, sold more copies than World Circus. They both kind of sold pretty well, but not great. They were, the sales weren't great. Our
But
label wasn't really behind us. They didn't push us that hard. Um, to this day, I'll talk to Monty Connor, and he and I will go back and forth, and I'll bust his chops about it because Monty basically signed us, and I've always given him shit. It's like, dude, man, Toxic could have been huge. He's like, no, you guys just never connected. And we go back and forth. I'm like, no, fuck you, Monty. you know?
yeah,
So,
yeah, right. Well, uh, I can say that World Circus has become a classic. I mean, it's one of the biggest, most classic thrash metal debuts in the same category as like Sacred Reich, stuff like that. And it's a classic, honestly. So anyone who's into metal, World Circus just like, oh yeah, that's a crazy record. But did you expect it to become a success when it among the fans when you were recording the album?
um, we hope you always hope. You don't know what anyone. You never know what someone's gonna like, right? None of us do. You go into it. You go into school and to take a test. You hope for the best. Even if you've studied completely and you're ready for it, you still have an air of what's going to happen. So we didn't know. We were happy that it got the response that it did. Toxic has always done well with other musicians. We are one of those bands that seems to get respect from other musicians. We don't always connect with the audience as well, but it seems like other musicians like us. And when you're a band that other musicians like, there's a way that kind of brings you out. And I felt like that always had kind of a lot to do with why our first real show that we played was at Dynamo 88 in the Netherlands. And, we played with Exodus and Candlemass and Sabbath and Laz Rocket. And it was fucking sick. Vicious Rumors. It was just a sick, sick show. And we were friends. We realized when we got there, all of the musicians knew who we were. Like when I met Rick Hoonholt from Exodus, he was like, dude, your guitar playing. Whoa. And I was already in awe. I was fanboying out with Exodus. I was like, what? And they were like, dude. So that's kind of how we knew we had something. That was like, it was like, oh, we didn't see it from the fan base yet or the label so much, but all the other musicians really embraced us and promoters. And that's how we knew we had something.
The cover art for this record, World Circus. It's a classic thrash album cover made by Ed Repka. The classic guy who made all the big thrash metal albums covers. So how did that part of the work go? So like, was there an Ed Repka art existing? So was this already existing when you were recording the album, or was it like, I don't know? You told Roadrunner the title, and then Ed Repka he drew something or like painted this thing. How did that go?
So Ed was starting out at the same time we all were, and he had Peace Sells. That was his real at that point. That was his monumental achievement. That was the biggest thing he had done, and that was a huge record for me personally. I love Peace Sells. Thought it was a great album, and loved the cover. Thought the artwork was phenomenal. So I had the concept for World Circus, the cover, before he touched it, before we started. I knew what I wanted because I had already kind of had the concept of the idea of the circus. So, and this was in Reagan era United States. This was the mid 80s, and we were dealing with a lot of political turmoil. Again, I've got a punk influence, so I'm going to be social in my communication, in my art. And the cover is very much that clown was actually supposed to represent every politician. Every politician is a clown, right? Especially in the American politics. So Ed, I knew what I wanted as far as the subject of the album went. He did a couple of versions of it, sent it back to me for proofs. And we went with the cover, and we are really happy with it. It's fantastic. There's a couple of funny stories about the album cover. If you've got one of the original vinyl pressings, if you look at the album covers, if you're looking at the album cover, here's the circus tent. Right up to the left of the tent, there's a black smudge. And that was actually a cigarette ash or something that fell on the painting after it got to the label and is not on all covers. You can actually find covers where that isn't on the cover. There were versions that there's a litho out there for a tour poster and a few other things that got done before that burn happened, but that burn mark on the cover is not part of the original art. Is it in yours?
Let's see. I don't know if you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
see it. Well,
That's
it's
it
kind of
right there.
reflecting. Which
Now
one?
you see that little black mark to the left right there? That
Uh,
wasn't supposed to be there.
yeah, really?
Yeah.
Wow. So like, but it kind of looks like smoke or like.
Yeah, yeah, it works. It fits, but it wasn't supposed to be there. So and then years later, this is a little weird, but you'll appreciate it. It's good for your show because I haven't talked about this much. Ed Repkin and I actually got into it a little bit because he said that those were his concepts. He said that the clown and the artwork was his, and that he came to me with the idea, which was totally false. Totally, it was absolutely. I certainly didn't write my lyrics around his cover, and the cover reflect my lyrics. So we know which came first. We know which is the horse and which is the carriage. Okay, but it's okay. It's cool. It's kind of neat that out in social media I can have an exchange with somebody that famous and hold my ground because I didn't let him get away with it. I was like, yeah, no. I busted his balls and we haven't really talked since then, but truth is truth. And I'm not going to shy away from the truth.
That's all
So,
right. So you said that we talked about that you're the only remaining original member. So yeah, since the formation of the band, there has been plenty of musicians, going, coming and going. Has it ever caused any difficulties that the lineup was basically constantly changing, or have you ever had to change your style according to the current musicians that you were working with?
well, to be very blunt with you, I'm asking a lot of people when they come to play with Toxik because we don't make a lot of money, and it's very demanding. You really got to have your chops. You've got to be able to play the music. Being on the road is not easy. Everyone thinks that it's a wild, fun adventure, and then they get out on the road, and after a couple of weeks, they're like, "Oh my God, I want to go home." It's really hard out there. It's not easy. It's fun. You have a great 2 hours every night, but the other 22 hours of the day are generally speaking really hardcore. So when you get people to come, I saw a great Chuck Schildiner interview one time about people coming and going in death. And he said it really well that it's super hard to find someone that can help you convey your dream, your idea for free. Like when you're not able to pay people, you're really asking a lot of them. So people have come and gone based on economics. There have been some artistic differences. Rarely, I've never thrown anyone out. People have left. There's never been anyone kicked out. I have no hostilities with any of the ex-members. I'm on good terms with everyone. I would love to see Toxik do a live show and everybody get on stage one day. But yeah, man, it's always been sort of an egalitarian game for me. Like I want to bring my friends in, I want to make some great music, and hopefully we can have a good time. Don't expect to make a lot of money. We'll get to travel, we'll have a good time, but we're there for the art.
So now let's stop for a second, and I need to express my deep emotions and my deep feelings towards Toxic. On your second record, 89, sorry, Think This. There's a song called, I think it's the fourth song, but I'm not probably not correct. There Stood the Fence. It's a ballad, and it's freaking amazing. That's probably the best ballad ever made, and it's my favorite Toxic song. It's just it works with so many deep and meaningful emotions, and every single second of it is just pure gold. The concept, the lyrics, the meaning, everything is just like freaking phenomenal. But yeah, so how did the inspiration for writing that song come? Like, what was the inspiration behind it?
I got you. So two things. As a thrash band, we couldn't really get away with a ballad unless it was really good. And there was a lot of debate about putting that on the record at all, but it was such a strong song. And everybody was like, no, you got to put it on the record. It has to go on. Like, it totally breaks every fucking rule in the book, but let's do it anyway. Right. As far as what the song meant, it was deeply personal for me. Again, I'm kind of I grew up right outside New York City, and there's a nuclear power plant that feeds New York City, Indian Point, and it's vulnerable to a lot of things. It's vulnerable to an attack. It's vulnerable to meltdown, to breakdown, because it's a really old reactor. It's basically, I think it's on the same technology, or it's the same General Electric reactor that was in Chernobyl, or one of the places, or 3 Mile Island. Like, it's broken before. This model has broken before. So I knew this, and I knew people who worked at the power plant, and they were telling me all the time that it was leaking, and there was water, was spill off going from the cooling pools into the river. Like, I mean, it was really bad, right? So that's where the name Toxik came from too, actually, because we were surrounded by those like radioactive symbols with the three, like looked like a tape reel. They were everywhere where we lived. There were shelters. So we were surrounded by this like sort of threat of nuclear, winter. And at that time, Reagan, again, political, Reagan was really, and Bush were both really warrioristic. You could feel at that time that the US was starting to move away from its sort of hippie love thing, and we were moving into a much more militarized, aggressive standing, which is where we've been since. Like, our position as a nation has been very aggressive since the 80s. And I was really genuinely worried that we were going to start a war. I was really worried that Reagan was going to, there was the conflict. I don't know how familiar you are with that period of history, but like, we were basically having a war in Afghanistan, a quiet war with Russia in Afghanistan. We were using the Afghanistanians and the people who lived in the hills there as pawns, but really it was a skirmish between the U.S. and Russia. And I was very, very worried that that was going to turn into something more. So that song was a reflection of all of that. Was that we had become very militarized, that we had lost sort of our utopian ideals, and that we were now really kind of headed for something ugly. And I felt that. And I think that's why the song is as powerful as it is. I mean, it's a really emotional song. And when I was done writing it, like, it triggered an emotion in me. When I was done writing it, I called my mom and I sang it to her over the phone. Like, I called her up and I played it acoustic and sang it to her, because it's got the line about, this was our home, our Garden of Eden, but
Took what we could and left it there bleeding. Yeah.
Yeah, no, a long gray street with some houses built on it, less than perfect, but it was home. And I was talking about my house, and that made my mom cry when she
Wow.
heard that line. Yeah. So again, I kind of knew that it was just emotionally powerful, and it has stood the test of time.
Yes, yeah. It actually I connect to that song in a lot of ways. I really like that meaning of it, that like kind of our childhood is fading away and then everything is changing for the worse basically.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Such a happy song.
Yeah, but it's freaking incredible. And yeah, your debut, World Circus, had Mike Sanders on the
Yep.
vocals, but he left around 88. So when I was doing research, I couldn't find anything about that. Why did Mike leave?
He was really disenchanted with the lifestyle. Again, it's not easy. You have to get out there and you have to work for it. And it's, I think we all, especially in that era, we grew up with the idea of like, we're all going to be Kiss, right? You're gonna put out a record, you're gonna be rich and drive a limo, and everything that comes along with that. And of course, like, 2 years into it, and we were playing nasty little dives in the corner of Belgium somewhere and sleeping on pool tables because there were no hotel rooms available. And oh, dude, we really, really lived it. We really sleeping in people's houses, crashing out. one night we ended up in somebody's house. It smelled so bad of cat piss. I can't tell you. Like I walked in, it was like, ah. But when you have nowhere else to sleep, suddenly cat piss is livable. So we had those experiences, and Mikey wasn't feeling it. Mike, bottom line, Mike wasn't. He didn't like it. It just
Uh,
wasn't for him, and he left, and he never went back. He never came back. Like all of us left and came back, left and came back, left and came back. When he came back in 2012, 2014 to work with me, the second we went out on the road, and if Mike is seeing this, Mike, it's the truth. I'm not knocking you at all. The second we went out on the road, he was like, I hate this. I don't want to do this. Like the second we started, because he doesn't like to travel. He doesn't
right.
want to be stuck in a box. He doesn't want to deal with it.
Wow. All
So
right. But that's now at
that,
least I have an information about that. That's interesting.
I hated letting him go. I hated losing Mike. Mike is like a brother to me to this day. We roommated together. We've shared houses together. He's like really like family. I love him like a brother. So when he left, I was crushed. It was really hard to
No.
replace Mike. It was really tough.
Out of the three albums you released so far, which one do you think is the best, and which one was the most fun to make?
Wow. Again, they're all so different, and they were all fun to make. Really hard to pick a best. They're all three of them are pretty different. Actually, they're three unique pieces. Hard to hard to say that I had as much fun in my mid 50s as I did in my mid 20s with anything. Right? You know what I mean? Like once you're older, it's a very different experience. Um, but I think that all three of them have their own voice. All three of them are important to us as a band, for me as a writer. And I'm really proud of all three of them, I would say equally. I think they're all really good. Think This is a standout record because it created a benchmark at a time that there wasn't really anything else out there like it. World Circus is frenetic and fun and teenage. It's like got all that youth in it. You can really hear how young we are. Think This is like that, like we got serious. It's sophomoric, it's on that second pass, and we really wanted to show what we were about. And there's a lot of craft on that record. We got really into making that album. So that one is probably the most inventive or the most time spent being creative. Dismorta was that too, but I worked on a lot of Dismorta by myself. Like I did a lot of it and then sent the tracks out, and we worked like, so it wasn't quite, it was still a band effort, but not as much as the other two. So whatever.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to pick a favorite, actually for me as well. Probably World Circus, but it's I don't know. Like all three are really good, and the first two are freaking masterpieces. So yeah. Uh,
Hard to come out with another masterpiece. I won't lie to you. When you know that you've got a couple of records that have stood the test of time and have become sort of like benchmark records for people, it's hard to follow that up. I'm not, we were aware of that. We were like, so
yes.
you just give it your best. That's all you can do.
Is there any plans currently on a new Toxic record?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I said, I just posted one of the new songs yesterday. No, we're on our way. There'll be another album coming out. Maybe a double
Nice.
album. Maybe two vinyl. We'll see.
Wa- Awesome. That would be awesome. That would be great to hear.
I have a
All
lot of
right.
material. We have a lot of material, and we have like one of the songs is like 8 minutes long, so it takes up almost the whole side.
But that's awesome though. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So Toxic has been around for quite a long time, and you've toured a lot, as you mentioned it quite often. That how the touring was going. So what's your favorite concert or tour experience with Toxic?
Oh gosh, again, it's very hard for me. I have such a good time when I'm doing all this, so it's hard for me to pick favorites of anything. I mean, there are standout shows, obviously. We went out as direct support for King Diamond on Think This, and did 20, 30 dates with them or whatever it was. I mean, we played a lot of shows with them, and that was a pretty interesting experience. That was my first time out on the road in a real way, and I feel like Toxic had an experience on that tour. But the last tour that we did in June of last year with Heathen, we did a European run, and that was really fantastic too. I mean, we went out, we were really strong on that. We ended up opening for them, and it was a good. Our drummer plays with well, at the time he's not in Heathen anymore, but he was the drummer in Heathen for that tour. So he was doing double duty. He would play with us and then play with them. And Toxik is high energy, man. Like we really put out a lot of volts, right? So Heathen is an awesome band. They're a great band, but they're mid-tempo. They're a mid-tempo band. And we're a speed, really pummeling speed band. So we would come out and do our crazy frenetic circus thing, and then Heathen would come out and do their more sort of traditional metal thing. And I felt it made us look really good. Like
Awesome.
every night I felt like we just kicked ass because we were so high energy. It was like, even though I'm an old guy, I haven't lost that at all. We still get out there and just, and it was fun. That was a cool tour.
If you had the chance to go back in time and change something about the past of your music career, would you change anything? If
Oh
yes,
man, of
what?
course. I think anybody who says I wouldn't change anything is lying. Any one of us could make a decision to change something in our lives. Everyone has a regret. I don't care who you are, and so yeah, are there things we could have done differently? Sure. We could have like not signed with Roadrunner way back when and signed with Metal Blade or somebody else instead, and who knows? But what can you do? We play the hand that we're dealt. We hope for the best. That's life, and I feel that like, my Toxik experience, my music career is a metaphor for that. It's been somewhat random. I tried to plan for it as best I could, but you can only plan for so much. And it's been really great. I will be honest with you. I think that there are a lot of people that at this stage of their life, where I'm at in my life, would maybe not choose to do this, would maybe choose to do something else. But for me, I get to travel with my music. Like that's what it's provided for me. Like some people make money, some people do this. I get travel out of this. Like I'm able to sustain myself other ways. I make a living. I'm fine. I keep my house. But when I'm with the band, Toxik represents traveling. So I get to go all over the world, play my music, hang out with people like you. It keeps me very young-minded. It keeps me plugged into what our audience is. And honestly, I feel like it's the best payment in the world. Like I'd love to get, again, we're back to the money thing. I'd love to get rich. Be great, fantastic. But I really like traveling and experiencing. And honestly, Toxik has given me so much of that. I've traveled so much. I've experienced so much. I feel super fortunate, man. Would I change something? Maybe. Am I happy with the way things turned out? Fuck yeah.
What are your favorite hobbies, and what do you do when you're not on tour or not making music?
Tying up my girlfriend is my first favorite hobby. Um, kidding.
Yeah, right.
I'm totally kidding. Hobbies. You know what? I'm a one-trick pony, man. I do music. Honestly, that's like my thing. I play guitar and I record, and I'm into my kids. I have a really good relationship with I have two daughters, and I have a good relationship with my girls, and I follow their life and I stay involved with them, and that's important to me. Um, I it's really it's the music. I don't have a hobby. I do music.
All right. Uh, is there an underground rock or metal album that you would recommend to the people watching this interview? If there's anything underground or lesser known.
Sure. Detente, the band Detente. I don't know if you know who they were, but
No, actually.
okay. So I think it's Steve Ross, the guy that ended up producing Korn and becoming a very famous producer. His original band was called Detente, and they had a singer. Her name was Dawn Crosby. Sadly, she passed away. Detente was sick. They were so far ahead of everybody else guitar wise. If you're into technical guitar playing, especially, look. I think it was Recognize No Authority, I think is the name of the album. Really, really great record, and lesser known. Not a lot of people people who know it love it, but it's not real well known. It's a sleeper.
Awesome. Th thanks. That's gonna check that out for sure because I actually didn't know that. That's pretty cool because I'm really deep into metal and rock music, but that's also underground for me.
Wait till you hear Daytime. You're gonna be like, no, I bet you write to me, and you're like, dude, this is sick. It's really good.
All right.
Check out Realm too. You know Realm? Have you listened to
I
them
know,
at
of
all?
course. Yeah, there's they
Okay.
have their 88 record,
Endless War.
Endless War. Yeah, I didn't want to say Endless Pain. Yeah, with the horse on the cover. Yeah, that's a really awesome record.
Monty picked that cover out. That wasn't going to be the cover of the record, and they weren't happy with the cover. And Monty ended up I think Monty was the one that gave them that artwork for that cover.
It's a
I
really
know
cool.
Takas and I got to connect we played a show, we played a festival where he lives last year, and I got to hang out with them. And I finally got to hang out and see Realm live and hang out and talk, and it was really fun. I really wanted to make a Toxic Realm something. I thought that that would be for the fans, would be awesome. People would totally like relate. I don't know if he's going to do anything with it. He's like, I can't. I don't know. We'll see. But if they do something, I hope they'll include me or at least like let me be involved a little bit because it would be fun.
Wow, yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah, awesome. All right, so yeah, basically these were all the questions. It was such an experience. So before we say goodbye and end the interview, what's your message to all the Toxic and Josh Christian fan out there?
Um, Thank you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for still paying attention. Humble. You know.
Definitely, guys. If you don't know Toxic, definitely check them out and check their new record out this Morta. And of course, the classic records, they're essentials for thrash metal and then the technical fans. So yeah, awesome. All right, thank you very much, Josh. It was incredible. If that's
My
all,
pleasure.
thank you very much. Long live
Okay.
metal.